Metropolitan area. Both of the assemblies of Occupy DC, Occupy Baltimore have information in the lobby that they'd like to share with you. Ask that you will please ascertain it before it is that you leave. 1 Kings 19, verses 2 through 5. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them." Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a tree and sat under it and prayed that he might die. "I've had enough, Lord." Anybody ever felt like that? "I've had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." You may be seated. I want to preach for a little while today using as a subject, it doesn't feel like Christmas. It doesn't feel like Christmas. Look at the person beside you and tell them, "I can preach this sermon." Man, it doesn't feel like Christmas. Global humanitarian Mohandas Gandhi said that the greatest form of violence is poverty. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the greatest threat of democracy to democracy is not the Taliban, but multinational layered corporations and banking institutions who have become belligerently violent against the poor. If you look at the belligerent violence enacted across the land, it is no amazement why millions are in fact galvanizing around the world asking for a difference. It might alarm you and upset you to discover that 1 in 7 families, representing 17.2 million households, are food insecure. Which means, ladies and gentlemen, that there are 17 million families while I'm speaking who have no idea what they're going to eat for dinner. Today, ladies and gentlemen, there are 46.9 million people living in poverty, the largest level of poverty in over 52 years. There are 20.5 million Americans who are living on less than $10,000 a year. And this is the land of the prosperous. This, ladies and gentlemen, is violence personified. There are 49.9 million Americans who do not have medical insurance. This is violence. Unemployment for African Americans has in fact skyrocketed to an amazing 15.7%, the highest that it's been in over 40 years. The reality is, whether you realize it or not, black people are in a harder predicament today than they were on the day that Dr. King was assassinated. The Poor People's Campaign that he dreamed about is now getting ready to come into fruition. While the top 1% of this country make an average, the top 1% make an average of $900,000 a year, earning, ladies and gentlemen, 27% of the available income, while the 99% are fighting to keep a roof over their head, keep their utilities on, their car in the driveway, and their children in school. This is violence. When millionaires will hold up the Senate and Congress because they don't want to pay taxes. This is, in fact, a high level of violence. We last saw this sliding scale of injustice and inequity with racism, but now it has changed clothes and has reintroduced itself as classism. Martin Luther King Jr. was mentored by remote control by the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, the practice of sit-ins that Gandhi in fact instituted against South Africa. Gandhi employed them because it was in fact a Hindu tradition to sit down outside of the house of somebody in whom you owed, praying that the debt would be relieved. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference began to take that idea, that principle, and it was then popularized by SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, as a protest for integration that led to eviction, usually by force or arrest. The church became the catalyst for the sit-ins across the South, in which all of us began to see that injustice anywhere was a threat to justice everywhere. And so the churches began the training centers and began the places of safe harbor, sanctuary, so that those who were in fact sympathizers and those who were identifying with the racism of Jim Crow would in fact be able to find a solace. And so sit-ins began to take place across the South at Woolworth lunch counters. Sit-ins began to happen in the front of Greyhound buses. Sit-ins began to take place outside of the Supreme Court. Sit-ins in Baltimore at Stewart's department store. Sit-ins began to take place, hear me, because we began to declare, I'm not going to let nobody turn me around. We begin to sit in, ladies and gentlemen, until somebody would make justice stand up. Within the last 3 months, the Occupy movement has in fact begun to take a stand against the gross economic inequity across this country, the fiscal disparity and the abuse of the privilege against the poor. Robin Hood has been reversed because the rich are becoming richer, while the poor are getting poorer. And many people have become confused over the clips that you see on the news about what Occupy stands for. But if you will put yourself in a time machine, please know that the same kind of resistance, the same kind of defiance that the Occupy movement is now exemplifying is the same picture that you saw in the 1950s and the 1960s when our grandparents were walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, were in fact making a stand to make a difference. At its very core, the Occupy movement is, in fact, a nonviolent one.